Dude, I don't know what took me so long to see Death Note, but this show, I say this show, I watched it like 3 or 4 months ago, but I just have not gotten over it over the last few months. It feels as though it's been blowing up on social media even more so than usual, and it's had a bit of a resurgence. But man, I watched this show. I finished Death Note around like 3 or 4 months ago, and it is so good. It's insane. I mean, I've watched quite a few anime. I think I watched around 80 or 90, primarily romance anime, just because that's kind of what I watched when I got back into it. So that was just kind of the genre I was used to. But Death Note, I just want to talk about what I like about Death Note. First of all, main character, very, very much, like, what's the word? He has the gimmick of having a really like big ego, but that's what's like super funny and interesting. But of course, super intelligent character, very much perfect in pretty much every aspect of life. But him having that little blunder of having a big ego is always just so funny. And, you know, people behind the screen are just like, Light, please, just don't announce your Kira. Don't try to, you know, get a one-up on Al or Nia. But I think one thing that's really strange is that I found myself kind of rooting for Light. I don't know, maybe I'm a bad person, but just seeing someone who initially really just wanted to reduce crime rates until people like Al started to step in, I think is really interesting. And of course, Al as a character is very complex as well, because in certain ways he was quite unethical in the sense that he would manipulate the police force at times, and you know, he definitely put a lot of lives at risk by pursuing Kira publicly. And that was also one of the big reasons why Light would kill so many people in the first place, was to eliminate a lot of the police force that were supporting Al. I think a lot of people think that Death Note was ruined after the second half, and I personally massively disagree. I think that the show was still amazing. I think the worst part of part 2 still beats the best part of many other animes. I still think that, and again, spoiler, but Al dying in, you know, the last part of the first half of Death Note doesn't massively decrease the quality of the show, because Al dying was necessary, right? And the reason why I say this is because Light's perception of Al was that he was his, you know, his final match, his, you know, his biggest rival, his 50-50, you know what I mean? They were both equal at and always trying to one-up each other. And I feel like Light's ego was so inflated the moment Al died, and that's why Light lost, right? That's why Light felt as though he could really do anything, because at that point, Nia was inferior to Al. Anyone was inferior to Al. To him, Al was, you know, the final boss. And once he was eliminated, Light kind of took it a bit easy, right? That explains why him and Mikami lost in the end, because the truth is, all you had to do was tell Mikami to keep a few pages of the notebook. Genuinely, that's all they had to do. Just like keep it with him somewhere hidden in his workplace even. It's really not that hard. And again, a simple thing like that would have been thought of if it was the first half, when if Al was still alive, Light would have thought of that. But the whole point of Death Note is that Al was meant to die so that Light would become even less cautious, let his guard down, and think less of people like Nia and Mello, who actually ended up catching him. I think that also there's a lot of great symbolism. I think that it's very, very clever that he dies halfway through on the staircase, kind of like lying down on the staircase. I think that's very cool to kind of show that his morality is kind of in the air, right? And also people use a Death Note, they usually are not sent to either heaven or hell. They're kind of in this blank space. I think that it's very interesting that the Shinigami of like Ryuk was very much neutral. I think that's very clever, because he's meant to be this person who's kind of just watching this for entertainment. He's essentially the viewers in this situation. And I think it's nice to see, I guess, the villain have an accomplice that doesn't really take part, right? Ryuk only really takes part for apples. That's kind of the whole thing. And this show is really good. I would honestly give Death Note like a 9. I would say it's a 9. I will agree that the second half was worse than the first half, but that's very marginal. The difference isn't really insane, and it's just a different feel to the show, right? I feel like part 1 just felt different to part 2, but not in a bad way. It's just that part 1 was so good. Honestly, part 1 was really, really good, especially when Light regains his memories. so many cool moments, like so many quotable moments. The music soundtrack is great. The artwork even back then was amazing. Mikami just deleting everyone is so cool. Mikami is so cool. I think a lot of people hate Misa, but I think Misa is such a great character. She's an amazing representation of how obsession is quite dangerous and damaging. And I mean, I just don't have anything bad to say about the show, to be honest. Can't name one thing that I think is bad about this anime, and that's usually quite rare because I usually have something bad to say, just in a objective sense. So yeah, that's my little rant about Death Note. I think it's really, really good. So many cool edits on TikTok as well of the show. And yeah,